Imagine growing up knowing you were invisible, even when you were standing right in front of everyone. Imagine becoming so good at disappearing that people stop asking where you went. This is why it truly sucks to be Leon. Leon was never loud, never dominant, and never the one others looked for first. From an early age, he existed on the edges of every space he entered. People rarely noticed him unless he chose to be noticed. At first, this felt like something was wrong with him. Later, it started to feel like protection. While others competed for attention, Leon learned to avoid it entirely. Being unseen felt safer than being evaluated. Silence became his comfort zone. Observation became his strongest habit. He learned more by watching than by speaking. Patterns revealed themselves when you stayed quiet long enough, and slowly invisibility stopped feeling accidental and became intentional. When Leon was 6, he spent a lot of time alone, even when others were around. His parents cared for him deeply, but didn't quite know how to reach him. They described him as easy because he didn't demand attention. He didn't cry loudly or throw tantrums. He didn't interrupt conversations. At home, he played quietly, often disappearing into corners or behind furniture. When adults talked, Leon listened from a distance. He learned early that being quiet meant not being corrected. Praise came when he stayed out of the way. Affection felt calm, but distant. Love existed, but it didn't feel loud. And Leon learned that silence was something adults appreciated. By the time Leon turned 10, he knew he wasn't like the others. Other kids laughed loudly, argued openly, and took up space without thinking. Leon moved between them without friction. At school, teachers sometimes forgot he was present. At home, his presence was assumed rather than engaged with. He noticed how easily people overlooked him. Instead of resisting, he leaned into it. He learned how to move quietly, how to stand still without drawing attention, how to vanish from focus without leaving the room. It felt like control over something no one else understood, and control felt powerful. At 14, Leon began to understand the consequences of his invisibility. He realized people didn't ignore him because he was unimportant. They ignored him because he made it easy. Louder voices filled space faster. More aggressive personalities drew attention. Leon slipped through conflict untouched. Others didn't see him as a threat. That made him dangerous in a different way. He learned how to move without being tracked, how to listen without being noticed, how to see patterns others missed. And something inside him hardened permanently. There were moments when other brawlers would gather together, laughing, training, or just hanging out. They would run across maps, test their skills, or simply enjoy being loud together. Leon was there at the beginning, and then suddenly, he wasn't. Someone would ask where Leon went, and no one would have an answer. They hadn't seen him leave. They hadn't noticed him disappear. He simply wasn't there anymore. Sometimes he was watching from a distance. Sometimes he had already moved on. People joked that Leon was always around, but never really there. And that strange uncertainty shaped how they treated him. Leon noticed the way others reacted to his absence. They didn't panic. They didn't worry much. They assumed he would show up again eventually. He was treated like something temporary, something that came and went naturally. No one depended on him being present. No one waited for him to return. That realization hurt more than open rejection. Being optional felt worse than being unwanted, so Leon leaned even harder into disappearing. If he was already forgettable, he would control it. Leon interacted with others, but rarely connected deeply. Conversations stayed shallow and brief. Emotions were hinted at, never shared. Others talked around him more than with him. He listened quietly as stories unfolded without his input. He rarely corrected anyone, rarely interrupted, rarely insisted on being heard. Attachment required visibility. Visibility required vulnerability. Leon avoided both instinctively. Distance became his default setting. Leon spent a long time watching how easily attention found others. Some brawlers were noticed the moment they entered a room. Their voices filled space without effort. Their presence demanded reaction. Leon stood nearby and felt none of that gravity pull toward him. He observed how admiration followed confidence, how fear followed aggression, how love followed openness. Leon understood that attention always came with a price. It brought judgment, expectations, and vulnerability. While others accepted that cost, Leon quietly rejected the deal. He chose distance over exposure. Being unseen meant being untouched by opinions, and untouched felt safer than being loved conditionally. At some point, Leon realized his absence wasn't weakness, it was leverage. People failed to prepare for someone they couldn't track. Enemies focused on visible threats. Leon moved through blind spots effortlessly. He learned the value of timing over force, patience over aggression, precision over chaos. Others announced themselves before acting. Leon acted before anyone noticed. Invisibility became strategy. Strategy became advantage. Advantage became reputation. And fear grew quietly around someone rarely seen. Leon learned that words create exposure. Once you speak, people assign meaning. Meaning creates assumptions. Assumptions create expectations. Leon wanted none of that. Silence kept him flexible. Silence kept his options open. When he spoke, people listened more closely. That gave his words weight. He chose quality over quantity. Speech became deliberate, not casual. Expression became controlled, not emotional. Others filled the silence for him. Leon let them. Loneliness followed Leon quietly through every stage of his life. It never arrived dramatically. It was always there. Being alone felt familiar rather than painful. Connection felt unpredictable and risky. Leon learned not to crave what could disappear. He accepted solitude as stable ground. People came and went without leaving marks. Expectations never formed. Disappointment never arrived. He carried loneliness without resentment, without complaint, without asking for more. Choosing isolation felt easier than risking rejection. Leon stopped asking for help very early. Help required explanation. Explanation required trust. Trust required vulnerability. Vulnerability felt dangerous. Leon preferred certainty. Handling things alone gave him control, even when it cost him energy, even when it slowed him down, even when it hurt. Self-reliance became instinct. Dependence felt like exposure. Exposure felt like weakness, and weakness felt unacceptable. Stillness made Leon noticeable. Movement blurred his presence. He changed positions constantly, adjusted timing instinctively, adapted faster than others reacted. Predictability invited attention. Attention invited threat. Leon avoided both. He learned to stay ahead rather than confront. Evasion became second nature. Rest felt unsafe. Pausing felt like risk. Motion gave him control. Stopping meant being seen. No one ever fully understood Leon. They saw his efficiency, not his exhaustion, his precision, not the pressure behind it. They respected his results, not his process. Fear replaced curiosity. Distance replaced empathy. Leon rarely corrected their assumptions. Being misunderstood felt safer than being exposed. Connection required explanation. Explanation required openness. Leon avoided both. Over time, isolation became permanent. He existed among others without being known, and that absence hollowed him quietly. Leon became someone defined by control. Control over movement. Control over presence. Control over exposure. He learned to survive by minimizing himself, by staying quiet, by staying unseen. Efficiency replaced expression. Calculation replaced instinct. Survival replaced joy. He mastered disappearance, but mastery narrowed him. It isolated him emotionally and shaped everything he became. Leon survived by disappearing. He protected himself by avoiding attention. He gained control through silence. He mastered invisibility instead of voice. He learned survival before connection. He became powerful without being understood, effective without being known, safe without being close to anyone, invisible yet heavy with unspoken weight. He did everything right to survive his world, but survival demanded sacrifice, and the price was isolation. That is the quiet tragedy of Leon, and that is why it truly sucks to be him.